Well, hey Greg, welcome.
Hello, hello.
And this is actually kind of my favorite type of podcast because you and I we didn't have a prep call. We've never spoke before. This is really kind of the first time we're speaking. So I get to ask the real questions. It's going to be incredibly authentic. I have no idea where it's going to go. We'll figure it out.
Story of every day of my life.
So let's talk about your life. So you run Euler. You founded it. I'd love to hear about the company. I mean, I just know what I've seen online, but I got the man himself. So why don't you tell me about you and the company?
Yeah. I built partner programs for the last decade, um, and many of those from the ground up, and did so in a very kind of elbow grease, resource intensive, inefficient manner. And then I was doing some consulting work after that, and started to see the partnerships wasn't really getting the, let's call it, love and attention, more specifically resourcing and budgeting, that it deserved within most GTM organizations. And I was really just super confused and curious, like, why that was, because I think if anybody's ever been a part of a successful partnerships organization, they've seen that the results that it drives are just undeniably better than any other channel. And we know the typical things, right? Lower acquisition cost, faster sales cycles, higher win rates, higher contract values, better retention, so on and so forth. So as someone that studied economics in college and is very much takes a unit economics mindset to everything, I was like, why aren't more businesses doing this? This is just kind of a gimme. And so I dug a little deeper, and I realized that there's a big disconnect, between partner teams and the people that make the decisions about partner teams, namely boards, C suites, and such. Specifically, the disconnect was that the people making the decisions didn't really understand partnerships. If you've never done it, it's a very complex, nuanced motion. And so if you've never done it, you don't really understand how it works, right? You just kind of, you don't see how the sausage is made of building a program and a relationship. You just see the output, right? Or lack thereof, for that matter. So they didn't get it. And part of that reason was because most partner teams weren't very rigorous in their operating. And even if they were, they couldn't really show their work per se in the form of like process and data. And so that's where the disconnect was. And I realized, you looked at like any other go-to-market team, sales, marketing, or any team for that matter within a business, they all had lots of tools to help them operate rigorously, right? They had tools to help them create efficiency in their workflow and remove manual effort. They had things that help measure and track, everything that they did, and help them understand, like, why were they being successful or why were they not being successful. And partnerships didn't have anything like that, right? We had traditional like PRMs or partner portals that were built for the traditional channel, but unless you're like Intel or Cisco or Dell, like, that doesn't apply to you. That model doesn't really work for you. And those platforms didn't really solve real problems for you. And then you had like these newer platforms that were basically like affiliate marketing platforms masquerading as PRMs or portals. And yet none of these platforms had ever looked at the fact that like partnerships is the most complex go-to-market workflow. There's nothing linear about a partnership, or what you drive from it. Like sales, you've got predictable revenue, right? You've got a sales funnel. Marketing, you've got a marketing funnel. Partnerships goes up, down, left, right, forward, back. There's a lot of things that have to happen to make it successful. And yet those teams have nothing to track and measure all of that, nothing to create efficiency in that workflow, and nothing to really help them justify the value that they're driving for the business. So we decided to build something that would do that, right? Not just like a incrementally better PRM or portal, even though that's who we compete with at the moment, but something that also looked at taking care of partner ops, and something that also looked at data and analytics, but was also simultaneously completely synced with the existing source of truth, the CRM, so that when the partnerships team, got up on their soapbox and said, "Hey, look at all the great stuff we've done," the first response from the board or the C-suite wasn't like, "I don't know about these numbers. Where did you get these numbers?" Right? So I know it's kind of a long-winded story, but that is really exactly how it came to be. And we started it 2.5 years ago to build what we now call the Partner Revenue Growth Platform.
That's great. Now, do you feel like we're closer to solving that challenge, or is there still a massive disconnect between the people making the decisions and the people in the trenches running partnerships?
I mean, certainly for the folks using Euler, they're a step closer for
Yeah.
sure. I think generally, albeit slowly, that gap is starting to close. predominantly because like there kind of is no choice now, right? Like back when money was falling from the sky in the ZERP era, nobody really cared about the numbers, right? Nobody was looking at efficiency. Everyone was basically just like throwing attribution stake into the yard, and it didn't matter which GTM dog like latched onto it or if they fought about it, right? But now everyone's thinking about profitable, efficient growth. And so it's like, well, what is the most profitable and efficient channel? It's partnerships. And they want to invest in it. But again, I talk to a lot of C suites and boards, and they're still hesitant because unless they can really understand, at least within a relatively small delta, like what output am I going to get for this investment? It's hard to make that investment, right, when resources are limited. So I think we're going in the right direction, but I think there's still a lot longer of a way to go.
Now, I believe I read that you launched Euler Bootstrap. So I'd love to know, like, what was that journey like? Have you ever built a software company before? Like, tell me about how you got to here, because I mean, it looks like you're pretty successful where you are today, but I'm sure there were some challenges along the way.
Yeah. Bootstrapping is not for the faint of heart. I have never done it before. Technically, I've launched a company before. I launched a vodka company many years ago. Story for another time.
Very cool.
Uh, but no, but this is really like my first major foray into entrepreneurship and specifically building a software company. So bootstrapping, I will tell you, is extremely hard. I think if we didn't have the luck that I had kind of just building a personal brand around my expertise in partnerships, and doing a very kind of grassroots community led growth strategy for the business and really kind of building with the industry of partnerships rather than like just kind of outside as an outsider, I don't know if we would have been able to accomplish what we have. I mean, we've grown very quickly. We hit $1 million in ARR within our first year. We've got now incredible customers like Gong, Bamboo HR, SpaceX. Like it's pretty cool, honestly, to do so. But it's been an incredible grind, like just a crazy amount of work. And bootstrapping really, I think there's a ton of pros and cons. The thing that I think is the biggest pro is the fact that like we didn't have the luxury of just making decisions and hoping they work out. Like we had to be very, very strategic about everything we did. We had to be very thoughtful about every dollar we spent. And ultimately, like we had to monetize quickly. Like we had to build something that people actually valued, and they always say like you can build whatever you want, but until someone pays you for it, like it doesn't matter, right? And so we started to have people pay us relatively early, and then we've gone up market like relatively quickly and started to have like big 6-figure deals when at the beginning of the year, like our ACV was in the low 5 figures, right? And so like bootstrapping, while extremely difficult, I think really helps you figure out if you've actually got a business.
Yeah, and you mentioned the community-led approach, but I'm curious, did partnerships play into your own go-to-market strategy in terms of where you are today?
It has. And the reason I say it that way is much less so than I would like it to. Obviously, I want to be an extremely partner-led business, just because of my very deep belief in the model. But unfortunately, as we all know, partnerships takes some level of focus on it. And since even though we're a team of 14 now, like I am the only go-to-market person still. I'm working to change that right now, but I am sales, I am marketing, I am partnerships. So we haven't been able to invest as much in building like real strategic partnerships as we would like to. Although there are some, for example, like one of our best partnerships is with a company called Partnership Mastermind. I don't know if you know Chris Lavoie.
Mm-mm.
But he basically built what I would say is probably the best partner manager bootcamp that exists right now. And his approach to partnerships has always been very aligned with kind of our ethos, which is again data driven and process oriented. And so it's great because I constantly have people coming to me asking like, hey, how do I learn partnerships, right? Nobody gets top partnerships. There's all these like sales methodologies and courses you can take. There's not much for partnerships. And again, it's a harder job than sales, I would argue. So I'm constantly kicking people his way to take his course so they can up level their skill set. And he's constantly like kicking people our way that are like at that point now. And now they need a system to actually implement the models and playbooks that he teaches them, right? So I think that that's a very nice complementary, better together story. And I will still say, like, we get probably about a third of our business from referrals. Um, but I wouldn't necessarily call that like a fully baked partner program as of yet.
Yeah, but it's completely aligned with your community-led approach, so that makes a lot of sense in how you're approaching that. So I mostly work with marketers and mostly talk to marketers. So, deal reg, attribution, influence, pipeline, a lot of talk around those topics. Like, what are your views around attribution these days? Are we any closer to solving attribution on partner marketing, partner deals? Just what do you think?
Again, I think we're getting closer. I think the conversation around attribution needs to change. I recently spoke to a chief partnerships officer named Michaela Davis from Trintech, and they basically do what I consider to be the gold standard of kind of partnerships and attribution, I guess, reporting. And when she goes into the board meeting with her CRO and her CMO, they all report together, meaning like it's not here's what sales did, here's what marketing did, here's what partnerships did. It's here's what we did across the board, and here's how each of us played a role in it. And here's how partnerships, for example, like helped sales and marketing and sourced and influence and all that. And it creates this very cohesive story of like, this is how we accomplish the goal to better, faster together versus like, here's what my little kingdom did. Here's what my little kingdom did. Here's what my little like I think that approach is flawed and has been pushed down from boards and C suites, and is a culturally flawed approach. And I think it needs to be much more of a like, hey, we're just trying to accomplish the goal, and we know that we need all of these instruments playing in harmony to achieve that goal in the best way possible. So I think it's going that way, absolutely. That being said, most organizations are not doing that, and so we absolutely are trying to, with the product and just the ethos, say like, hey, you have to have clean rules of the road. You have to have a clean attribution model, right? Like you're absolutely just blind to assume that like somebody is buying something from one touch attribution. Like that doesn't exist, especially in B2B. You're talking about at least like 20 something touches. So you have to figure out like, are we doing first touch? Are we doing last touch? Like what qualifies as sourced? What qualifies as influenced? And like, what do we have to show to actually determine whether or not this qualifies? And that puts both the onus on like the leadership team to set those guidelines, but also on the partnerships team to kind of like at that point step up to the plate and say like, yeah, this is what we did, or partner marketer, like show us how your touch is the one that got this, over the line or actually created the opportunity versus just like finding a lead. So I think it's going in the right direction. But again, I think it all always comes back to data and process and having rigor around both of those things.
Yeah, no, I like that. I mean, from my experience, that seems very aspirational, and I'm glad to hear some organizations are doing it. I know a lot seem to want to go in that direction. They're just not there.
Yeah.
What other think about, you specifically work with a lot of partner organizations. Besides being highly siloed, what other challenges are you seeing in terms of how these companies are set up? Or maybe on the flip side, what are some other partner organizations doing really well that people should learn from?
God, how much time do you have? Um, I mean, the challenges are there's no like, I think challenges that any of us are going to be surprised by anymore. It's challenges around expectation setting. It's
Hmm.
challenges around alignment, both executive and cross functional. It's challenges around resourcing, right? Either from a headcount perspective, from a cross functional perspective, or even from like an ops perspective. Those are probably the biggest challenges. I think the thing that really is still rather surprising to me, honestly, to this day, is that I regularly speak to partner organizations that are driving like a very significant amount of revenue, right? 30, 40, 50, more than 50%. And yet, from a headcount perspective, you're looking at like typically maybe 1/10 or 1/5, best case scenario, of the size of the sales team or the marketing team, which doesn't really make sense, obviously, just from a pure revenue perspective. And they're like, oh, well, the salespeople close the deals. And it's like, yeah, but if you got them to the green and all they had to do was put it in, that's a very different conversation than doing the 300-yard drive that we just took care of for you, right? So I think that's the weird thing, is that a lot of these executives and boards still are like, no, 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 we don't need to hire more people on partnerships. Go ahead, manage 100 partners, manage 150 partners. Hey, one partner marketer, go plan events for the whole year with like 30 different partners. And then marketing will still take attribution credit for it because technically you line up to them, or it's kind of silly from that perspective. So from a challenges perspective, I would say it's resources, alignment, and tooling mostly. From a what people are doing well perspective, I mean, there's the one example I gave you. Another example I love to give, just because it is very aspirational, but I think it's super cool, is, I don't know if you know Rob Moyer from Gong, but he runs Gong's
Hmm.
partner program. And they obviously use Gong for everything that they do, but they've got this very interesting use case of it where not only do they use Gong, because Gong, if you get all the bells and whistles, can actually predict pipeline very accurately. Not only do they use it for that, but when it comes to back to your influence question, if they get a question of like, how did the partner influence this deal, they can just ask the system, right? Because they have all the call recordings, they have all the emails, they have all the data. So they can actually show like, these are the 3 points where the partner influenced the deal flow. And based on the system's analysis, like, these were material in moving the deal forward or helping it close or getting this, like, the decision maker on board or whatever it is. So I think that, while aspirational, is becoming more and more realistic for more organizations, because like AI is everywhere now, right? You've got all these little AI note takers, you've got all this data, you've got all these ways to crunch it. And so we can't justify like the impact that the partner had is going to be less and less of an excuse. So I think that's something super cool that people are doing. And in general, I think people are just, again, starting to become more rigorous operators. It just like managing a P&L, reporting like consistently and clearly, and honestly just like asking for the resources that are necessary to be successful.
Yeah, I mean, I think going back to your original point in terms of that executive alignment, reporting up into the boards, and just being aligned cohesively across these silos, being able to have that data, like you're talking about that Gong example, makes that connection so much more powerful to have that connective, cohesive story. Probably a good chance to talk about AI. I'd love your thoughts on AI. How are you utilizing it with Euler, and has your thoughts changed or evolved over the last, God, I don't know. Stuff's moving so quickly in terms of the technology. I mean, where are you today with AI and Euler?
Yeah, do you mean like how we use it as a business or how we implement it into our product?
Either.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, as a business, I'll start there just because I think that that's also super cool. I mean, our development team obviously uses AI every single day. Well, I think most of our team actually uses AI every single day. But, for me, I help use it to do account research. I use it to help write my follow-up emails. I use it to like, help give me feedback on my LinkedIn posts when I write them up. And everyone thinks that I have a ghostwriter, but I do not. Say it here on the record. I do not have a ghostwriter. Sometimes Claude helps me think through different word choice, but that's it. Um, and I mean, there's AI workflows. There's ways to leverage things like N8N to connect different systems. We're using AI to like to actually establish like ICP and to help filter through the lead flow that comes in to help determine like who we should be actually talking to. And that's just the beginning of it. I mean, we're very early with that stuff. But how we're implementing it into the product, I'm trying to. This is going to launch next week. This
Yeah. Hmm.
podcast.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just thinking about what I can and cannot say right
Yeah.
now.
No. The 12th is what we're
The
shooting
12th.
for.
Okay, there's one thing that I would love to talk about, but we're not going to announce it quite yet. By the time this launches, but I think the where we've already got AI in the product with something called Deal Flow AI, where, for example, if you get a referral or a deal registration via email, which, as we know, that's how most of them come through. Partners hate forms, and I genuinely personally think forms are just an annoying friction point in general. So you get that email. We were the first platform to launch something where you can just forward it to us or copy us if you're looping in a sales rep, and the system just parses it, pulls it out, no structure required, and then just registers the deal registration or the referral
Hmm.
automatically. So that's one. Two, like for example, we have a contracting system in our platform. So we have an AI where like if you just upload your standard agreement, it'll just read it. It'll turn it into an agreement in our system. It'll put all of the dynamic fields where they need to be, the signature box, all of it, just like that. 3, we're launching a marketing hub, and the marketing hub is actually going to have like just like a HubSpot or whatever. You can send like blast messaging, segmented messaging, triggered campaigns, but you can build the emails inside of the system. Of course, there's an AI where you can literally tell the AI, like you can vibe code an email
Hmm.
essentially. Hey, here, can you send an email to my partner, create an email for my partners about this that looks like this with this information pulled from, our knowledge base or something I just uploaded, and it'll just go build the email, right? So I think that, and that's just the beginning. We're building a lot cooler AI stuff. I think the really, really interesting use case for AI in general is around data, right? It's not how do I make one little job, somewhat faster or easier. It's how do I figure out, you know, how this is all working, right? It's how do I improve my partner experience? How do I improve my program? How do I like validate, the impact of what we're doing in the way that like, Rob's team at Gong is doing. So I think that's the really interesting use case for AI. We're definitely going in a lot of those directions. I know that there's other cool AI use cases like, Partner Fleet has an ability for you to create a partner's directory listing with AI without them having to do it, right? I think that's a great use. It removes friction. I know Crossbeam's leveraging some AI to like actually start to surface the right ecosystem touch points into your deals at the right time. So I think that's the really interesting use case for AI is not just like, how do I make my job a little easier? It's like, how do I actually like figure out the connection points that I need to make this business happen without me even having to like know where to look.
Yeah, that's been my kind of point of view on a lot of this. Is it's funny how it's autonomous, and technical, but at the same time, I feel like the people that are getting the most out of it are also the most creative because they're seeing those connections and they're innovating very quickly with the tools. I want to ask you on a personal note, like as a founder, with just the possibilities from productivity to product development, how much faster do you feel like you're moving today than 2 years ago?
I mean, we were already moving very quickly. I'm not a developer at all. I couldn't code my way out of a paper bag. So I don't know how much faster our team is moving than they would be without it because I didn't even know they were using it every day till like 6 months after they started. Because again, I don't touch that part of the business at all. My co-founder and I have very separated kind of church and state situations. We're both very good at the things we do and have no interest in the things the other person's doing. But that being said, I mean, just the pace of just the pace of acceleration and development of these technologies. I mean, I didn't think when I first started this, and we were like working through our roadmap last year, I did not think that we would be adding AI into our product this year. Like if you had asked me, 6 months ago, maybe 7 or 8 months ago, like when are you guys going to be adding AI? I'm like, oh yeah, it's going to be a 2026 thing. And now like we've been adding AI into our product for a while. And like now, like we're not building anything that doesn't have AI embedded into it in some fashion, let alone like it might just be purely AI. So I think just the pace with which this is changing is super, super cool. But look, let's be honest, on the flip side, it's not a complicated technology. It's really leveling the playing field. So it really changes it really removes the majority of moat that you can have from a purely product perspective, which is really a new and an interesting challenge that we didn't anticipate. And now you start having to think of like, so then if you can't have a product mode because anybody can vibe code your product in a few months, oversimplified of course, what becomes the moat as a business? And then you have to start thinking about like, is it your network? Is it your data? Is it your brand? Like I don't know the answer to that question, right? We're trying to
Yeah.
figure it out. So it's very much a double-edged sword, the AI. It helps you do a lot more, but it also makes it a lot easier for anybody else to do it just as well,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
maybe just as quickly.
Well, I know if you're not doing it, you're definitely falling behind. So it's like one of those things you got to do it, and then we're just gonna figure it out as we go. I want to switch topics a little bit. Thinking about organizational structure, I have a lot of friends and colleagues in the industry who very senior partner marketers at large organizations.
Yeah.
Now a lot of them are going to startups, and they're helping to build the partner marketing organization from the ground up. And I'm hearing a lot of questions just thinking about, where should partner marketing sit from an org structure standpoint? Should it be in sales, in partnerships, in corporate marketing? Thinking about that alignment, just curious if you have a perspective on the marketers supporting partnerships, where that organization should sit within the broader org.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't claim to be as much an expert on partner marketing as other areas of partnerships, even though I've done it in all of my roles and I've had partner marketers supporting me. Um, all that to say, like, I don't necessarily know where the break points are. And the reason I mention that is like people ask, like, where should partnerships in and of itself sit? And my personal opinion is most of the time, until you get to a certain size, it should report to the CEO. And that's because that's the only way that that cross-functional alignment happens. That's the only way that it gets the kind of like platform that it needs. A lot of people say it should be under the CRO, it should be under the CMO. I find that that creates a disconnect, and creates a challenge around communication up and down. So when it comes to partner marketing, I've seen both. I've seen partner marketing successfully report to partnerships when partnerships also had great, like the partner leader had great cross-functional alignment with the marketing leader. Um, I will say I've had more success with partner marketing reporting dotted line to partnerships, but ultimately reporting up through marketing, because it just allowed that person to have better alignment with the marketing organization, and again leverage the resources of that organization. Because again, like one or two partner marketers, especially if you're at a startup, like you're not going to be doing all the content, you're not going to be creating all the enablement, you're not going to be managing all of the events. Like you're going to need the other resources on marketing to do that. And if you're like coming into them as an outsider from the partnerships team, they're just not going to be as willing to help as if like you're part of their team and you're in all of their meetings and you're viewed as one of them, to the extent that you can be.
So I want to bring it back to community as we look to close out here. You mentioned community. Leaning into community was a big part of your acceleration as a startup. I saw you recently attended Arcadia Leadership Experience. Just
Yeah.
curious for you, for someone who's 2 years into this journey, successful startup, how important are community based events like that for you as a business leader?
I mean, I think the community is really valuable because we're often on an island as partnerships people or as partner marketers. We're typically parts of a small team, if not, kind of on an island by ourselves. And it makes it really hard to, one, kind of know if what you're doing is the right way to be doing it, right? Um, it also makes it hard to just kind of not have someone to, I don't want to say commiserate with, but like someone to talk through the challenges and not know if like you're the only one experiencing these challenges, which most of the time you're not. So I think the community is super helpful because you can learn from them, you can lean on them. Um, and honestly, like I find it's helpful to have a good pulse on the industry, right? Like again, I didn't know what I didn't know about the broader challenges the partner teams experienced until I started doing consulting work, and I zoomed out from the companies that I was in. Because when you're in one company, you're just kind of laser focused on that business. And yeah, maybe you have your fellow partner managers or partner marketers at other companies that you're talking to occasionally. But again, it's a pretty small sample size. But if you can zoom out through a community, you actually can get a broader lens, which helps you both, solve your problems more effectively, but also, again, feel better about the challenges that you're experiencing.
Cool. Awesome. Greg. Well, this has been a great conversation. I know you're busy. I really appreciate your time. Where should people go if they want to learn more information about Euler?
Yeah. Follow me on LinkedIn, Greg Portnoy, or go to EulerApp.com, EULERAPP.com. And yeah, if scaling partner revenue is something that is important to anybody, we're worth looking up. We'll definitely beat out any other PRMs or portals you've ever seen.
Well, I can vouch your LinkedIn feed is educational in itself, so I highly recommend following that. And Greg, thanks so much for joining. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Rick.